Mario has a long and storied history on what's changed over the years and what hasn't, but there is one fundamental thing that has hardly changed and may never. It's that Mario has always been about the jump. From Mario's inception to the current iteration, the jump is used for everything, whether it's bouncing off enemies, smashing your head on a block, swinging across the stage, or soaring onto the flagpole to finish the level. Nearly everything in Mario is designed with the jump in mind. Maybe this is obvious, but nonetheless very important to understanding the game. Knowing this, one of the most important things to look for when playing a Mario game, whether it's 3D or 2D, is how they made the jump feel this time around. Mario has almost always given you a ton of control over the height of the jump, with the exception being Super Mario World, where the minimum jump height is fairly high, meaning the jump control is quite a bit more lacking, but you're compensated by getting a ton of control in the air, being able to move pretty far in the opposite direction of your initial jump. The game consequently is much more floaty than any other Mario game. The jump in Wonder is far closer to that of Super Mario Bros. 3, where you have full control over the height of the jump while being able to move in the opposite direction of your jump just enough to stop yourself from moving and land precisely on a platform. Similar to Super Mario Bros. 3 and World, it shares the mechanic that lets you build up speed to increase how fast you go and how far your jumps will take you. Overall, Wonder has the most fun movement I've played with in a 2D Mario game. The controls feel tight while offering a ton of freedom in how you move, whether you're in the air or on the ground. This enables you to combine different jumping mechanics together from different Mario games that feels very free-flowy. You can wall jump, do a spin twirl, and a ground pound all within the same jump. You even have the option to cancel your ground pound if you would like, although I'm not sure there's a reason for it. Anyways, all this movement can be then modified with badges, which are earned in the game as you progress and happen upon the badge levels. Your spin twirl can give you some extra lift. Your wall jump can turn into a wall climb, kind of like Celeste. The very first badge you get in the game lets you swap out spinning in the air for a hack glide. It's reminiscent of the cape or raccoon tail in previous games. There's also a badge that gives a flutter jump, much like the one Yoshi will do. The only caveat with badges is that you can only wear one at a time. My personal favorite badge to play with is the Jet Run badge. It allows you to run incredibly fast, as well as dash in the air for a short period after running off a platform. It's a ton of fun on the right stages. Although it has one major problem, it takes away a lot of the freedom of control you have over Mario. If you choose this badge, anytime you move in any direction, you are forced to dash instantly, making scenarios where precision is key incredibly difficult. This seems to be a trade-off for becoming blazing fast, but is ultimately bad in too many scenarios to use all the time. On the other hand, it does have places where it is incredibly fun to play with, especially some of the badge challenge levels that are made for it. It makes me wish there were a lot more levels designed with this badge in mind. On the flip side is the Hop badge, which is not very fun to play with, and I don't really understand why it exists. The badge forces you to jump instantly wherever you land, essentially making you hop continuously. This badge also takes away a ton of control, without giving nearly the same amount of benefits the Jet Run badge does. It does let you jump a little higher than normal, but so do other badges that don't take away so much control. It's a strange badge that doesn't fill any kind of niche or serve any useful purpose. The worst part about this badge is that the game recommends it for a stage where precision and timing is key. It simply feels awful to play on this stage. I was really shocked when they continuously recommended I put it on because how horrible that stage is to play while using it. It didn't surprise me that I didn't see a single person playing online choose to play with this badge equipped, in any level. They really should have decided to develop a different movement modifier with more intent than this one. Like a badge that gives you the air control you can get in Super Mario World would have been a far more interesting thing to have available. It's something they didn't really play around with too much, but would have at least been a more enticing thing to use. Overall, there's nothing that's nearly as game-breaking like the cape or the Tanuki tail in previous games. While these things are fun, because they existed, the games had secrets far out of sight that required the use of these powers, forcing you to fly up in every single level to look for hidden exits or secrets in general. Although some secrets are easier to discover with certain powers in Wonder, Nintendo puts interesting and fun mechanics into the game while keeping most secrets possible to find and do without requiring a specific power. With the mechanics of the jump and ways to modify it out of the way, let's talk about the game in general, starting with pacing. World 1 is a great start to the game that quickly introduces a ton of new things like the Wonder Flowers. These can totally change how the level works, and also lead you to Wonder Seeds, which happen to be the Stars of Wonder, the thing to collect. They also introduced a fun new elephant power right away, and highlight that you can shoot Wonder from your spout that can interact with different things. World 1 continues to be fresh and exciting until the end, but your first steps on Petal Island may drown all the momentum that was built up after introducing you to the first water levels. The problem being it's almost never as fun to move in water than on land in Mario games. They try to make up for it a little bit with the Dolphin Kick badge. It lets you do a little dash in the water, drastically increasing your swimming speed. but it's not enough to make water levels nearly as enjoyable as others. While I don't entirely hate water levels, I think they could have instead found some more interesting ways to play with the water. I do like that they mix in land with the water, as well as the Wonder Seed that puts the water above you, but ultimately it's still a water level and doesn't really change how it plays enough. Maybe they could have instead experimented more with having pockets of water around that you can move through, as well as making the dolphin badge something you innately get, like the spin jump. They play with pockets of water a little bit, like the clouds that rain and you can move through the rain like it's water, but I think they could have gone a bit further with it, simply by having them scattered around in more different levels. Then having the dolphin kick as baseline would have given more interesting movement options available, and then maybe opening up some new challenges using this kind of movement. Luckily, once we get out of the water levels and into World 2, the game starts picking up the pace a little bit. The rest of the game slowly pushes this pace with good challenges, fun secrets, and discovering the special world. World 3 brings us to some trials. We finally get a world in a Mario game where Bowser Jr. or another Bowser underling isn't goofing around. It's a blessing of not being forced to do another copy and paste of their pitiful boss fight. Then, after completing World 3, the game actually opens up, and you're allowed to go to World 4 to 6 in any order that you would like. From here on out, the pacing is mostly set by the player. I personally found it best just to do the worlds in order, but it doesn't matter too much. Although the average star level difficulty will slowly rise each world, I don't think the difference is significant enough to stop you from doing it in any order you would prefer. Generally, the pacing is pretty good for the entire game, except for that hiccup you get between Worlds 1 and 2. I found myself looking forward to playing each new level, and seeing the new things Nintendo had to offer in their design. Much of Wonder's design is very heavily inspired by Mario games that are not necessarily Mario platformers. Although every 2D Mario will somehow be derivative of its previous game, I did not expect so much influence from other Mario games, such as Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door and Super Mario RPG. If you're a fan of the RPG, you might have quickly recognized the familiarity in the jump sound in Wonder. It has much more of a spring-like sound to it, and is closer to the sound of the jump in the RPG than any other Super Mario game. And not only do they take inspiration from the jump sound, but also the movement in the overworld in Mario Wonder looks and feels a lot like the movement in Super Mario RPG. Within the first few levels of playing Wonder, you might also notice another familiar mechanic from Paper Mario, where pipes can take you into the background of a level, and of course the badges, that even serve a similar function. It seems Nintendo is finally starting to integrate a little more of the other Mario games to help change up the game and add some new color. Paper Mario and the RPGs are getting remakes, and are being released fairly soon, so I don't think it's a coincidence that the Wonder team found so much inspiration from these games. Wonder gives a pretty large cast of characters to pick and choose from. I personally chose Yellow Toad to be my guy. While having some variety is nice, I was a bit disappointed that they don't have the small changes in how they jump as they do in Super Mario Bros. 2. It would have been cool to see things like Peach get her floating jump. Or at the very least, they could have made character-specific badges. It feels like a missed opportunity here that could have given you a reason to choose one character over another. And Nintendo is so close to doing this because some characters do have some slight differences. Yoshi does actually get a movement difference and has the flutter jump from Yoshi's Island. Yoshi's also do not take any damage. Nabbit is included here as well, and Nabbit doesn't get knocked back. It makes them a lot less appealing for me to play, but I do think it's fine that this mechanic exists. Accessibility is generally a good thing to add to your game. The problem is that this accessibility feature could have just as easily been a badge you equip instead, or a setting that you turn on from the start. Instead, they lock characters to it. There's a lot of people who probably prefer playing a Yoshi but don't want to be forced to play on easy mode. I would have also liked to see Bowser working on our side again and fighting some other villain like in Super Mario RPG. He could have had a cool move like a ground pound that works as a mini POW block. Again, just lots of missed opportunities here in character choice and more ways to play. Although Bowser's boss fight is actually pretty well done, it could have been done with any generic character. Other than the final fight with Bowser, it's a total shame of what bosses in Mario Wonder look like. Boss fights are always against Bowser Jr. and not all the other Bowser lackeys like Ludwig and whoever else. It doesn't help that all these fights are the same concept that was in Super Mario Bros. 3. You jump on their head and they hide in their shell. Rinse and repeat 3 times for 30 years. They do add some twists and turns to it by adding some of the platforming concepts they've introduced in that world, but it's more of the same and doesn't actually make it different enough to feel challenging or interesting. Unfortunately, even Super Mario World has more boss variety than Wonder does, which is incredibly sad. They already have so much room to play with because they've already done the work by giving Bowser so many different lackeys. They could have easily all been brought back as bosses in each world and had different abilities and strategies to defeat them. Nintendo also has a ridiculous amount of design space to create new ways to fight bosses. They could have considered making the rooms larger and actually scroll. They could have had a boss that chases you and one that you chase down. Or mechanics like in Yoshi's Island where you have to ground pound the poles to hit them. It's mind-boggling that Yoshi's Island has more creative and interesting bosses than Wonder does. It's a total shame. But my biggest issue is that they clearly do know how to design a good boss. Bowser is one of the best bosses in any Mario platformer. It's on theme, it's fun, it's interesting, it's a spectacle. It also uses Nintendo's design formula to a T. They slowly introduce a mechanic on how to defeat the boss and then build on it each phase. It's super fun and a perfect end boss for Mario Wonder. It's so disappointing to see them not put forth a similar effort for the bosses in other castles, especially considering this is a $60 game by one of the largest and most profitable studios that exist. I simply expect a lot more from Nintendo because of this. It's as if they just don't want to make it too hard, or they just don't think it's important, but they could have made it as difficult as they wanted because they literally added a way to avoid all damage. Which then forces me to consider that Nintendo didn't think making a good boss fight was important enough, or even worse, that they thought the Bowser Jr. fights were good enough, which would be very sad to know, and I really hope it isn't that. Also, when the final level of a world doesn't have a boss or a difficult final level, it feels very anticlimactic. I don't mind the world's not ending on a castle, I think that's actually a great change, but I still think the final level should be at least a big challenge or some sort of cool boss encounter, something to pull the entire world together. There are 2 different times a world ends without a boss or a level that brings the world together, and all I could think was, oh, that's it, we're done here. That aside, the overall design of most levels are very well done, as you would expect from your typical Mario game. Levels are designed with the same mindset that's been in use forever at Nintendo. A new concept is slowly introduced, sometimes it's a new enemy or a new platform that moves in a different way, and then they build upon that new concept and test you on it. But this design structure has been modified ever so slightly by adding a new layer to it, the Wonder Flowers. They add a twist. Nintendo is so good at introducing these concepts to you that you don't even need to think about how it works when playing. Most people will just absorb how it works subconsciously from seeing it on the screen after they introduce it to you. Near the beginning of World 1 is a level called Bull Rush Coming Through. A bull charges toward you, but from a relatively safe position. During its charge, it will also smash a new kind of block we have yet to see. Instantaneously, you will recognize that, oh, bulls run at you, and they can smash certain kinds of blocks. Lastly, a coin is placed on top of the bull, inviting you to jump on them and realize they can't be killed from jumps, as well as that you can ride on them. Without even thinking about it, you've learned how this level works within the first 8 seconds of it, and then the level builds on this idea as you go. In just a couple screens over from the start, they try to entice you to do a ground pound on a tree. They do this by putting 3 coins down in a line on the tree, as well as making it shake when you jump on it. This is to try to hint at you trees that shake can be ground pounded, or even vice versa, that you should ground pound when you see coins in this pattern. When the level is done developing their idea of the Bull Rush, it throws a Wonder Flower at you to twist the same idea into something familiar, but using it in a totally new way. In this level, they hide the wonder inside some of the breakable blocks. A bull is just ahead, who will then jump at you, just like the one we saw right before this block, making you realize you can break those blocks by luring the bull towards it. Once you're in the Wonder Flower area, you are instantly greeted by a horde of bulls charging at you from behind. If you try to get the coin in the beginning, or try to jump on a bull at all, you notice that you can ride them. So if you know this, you'll be incentivized to ride them and see where they take you, which is just a part of the twist, the other part being that they can suddenly fly, and the rest of the level is designed around it. This is pretty typical of how most levels go in Mario Wonder. After this level, they take it a step further in the Star 4 difficulty level, where they then make the entire level a wonder. Nintendo then continues developing from the bull twist by having you ride on the bulls for the entire level and performing platforming challenges while riding them. It's really well done and a fun way to introduce different ways to play with familiar concepts. And the best part is that it's so intuitive that the player likely won't even recognize that they are learning anything at all. Mario has some of the best design when it comes to introducing and teaching ideas without the player even knowing, and Wonder continues to excel at it. That being said, complexity and difficulty are not Nintendo's strong suit. In Wonder, levels are rated by 5 different difficulties, with Star Level 1 being the lowest and 5 the highest. While the difference between a Star Level 1, 2, and 3 is hardly noticeable, the star difficulties aren't completely devoid of meaning. A 1-star level is all about introducing a simple concept, and then developing it slowly as the level continues. They're generally pretty short levels and difficult to die on. 2-star levels typically also introduce a new concept and develop it over a slightly longer period than a 1-star level would. Usually the added difficulty in these levels is the addition of a ton of gaps in space that you could potentially fall to your death in. 3-star levels are more of a mixed bag. They typically try to introduce slightly more complex or difficult concepts in these levels, but sometimes they continue the development of an idea from a 1-star level instead. 4-star levels are much more typically an expansion on a concept you've seen before, such as the level 2 badge challenge, or a 4-star bowl level that was previously mentioned, and often when building on a concept it'll be a wonder twist. Many Bowser castles also get listed as 4-star since they are made to be more difficult on purpose. They are often isolated from most concepts and have their own challenges to deal with. Sometimes a new concept is introduced in 4-star levels instead, usually a much more difficult one, such as the jump 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 level in World 2. Similar to 4-star levels, 5-star levels expand on previously introduced concepts, and it's usually done with a wonder twist, such as the Hippo level in the Special World. Technically the jump 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 level also uses a wonder flower, but I don't think I would define it as a twist. 5-star levels are usually well done, but there are not enough of them in the game. That aside, they are some of the most fun levels and actually provide a significant challenge. You'll likely actually find yourself dying and losing multiple lives on these levels, because they are much more difficult to sight read. Almost all of the 5-star levels are in the Special World, while the only other one I believe is in the final story level, Bowser's Castle. The largest issue with all of this is that they could take concepts and their difficulty a step further. While I think everything they made is really good, it could have easily been expanded upon in terms of difficulty and complexity. It's really disappointing that Nintendo continuously builds up these challenges and then just hits the brakes, when they could be making more fun and difficult challenges out of them. And of course they could simply make them optional and just add extra things so they don't stand in the way of the more casual player. Although I doubt hardly any of Mario Wonder's levels are holding even the most casual players back. Nintendo introduces increased difficulty and complexity a little bit with the Special World, but are a step below from what I would like to see when it comes to developing these ideas. Games like Celeste take concepts much further than Mario Wonder. Celeste is able to introduce concepts, expand on them, and then mix them in seamlessly with previously learned concepts to create stretches of levels using everything together. Then they are able to find ways to continually make them more complex and challenging across different special levels. It's impressively creative and challenging from just a few ideas mixed together. Let's take a look at Stage 2 in Celeste to see how they put this together. Celeste introduces these black boxes to you in Stage 2. You can dash through them and they propel you towards the other side. You also learn a few other concepts throughout the stage. One being a shadow copy of you that will imitate your moves, and you'll have to be careful with your pathing in order to not run into it. They also introduce switches that cause certain blocks to move when activated, opening a new path. Then they slowly combine all these ideas together, putting the black box, the shadow, and the switches all in the same room, creating an interesting challenge with all the knowledge you've gained. Then, in the next iteration of the stage, or the B-side, they teach you how to get a big jump after exiting a black box, making it an important mechanic to know how to do so they can develop on it. Then they go on to continue combining all the concepts you've learned from the stage in new ways to challenge the player with this added complexity. And then for the final challenge, the C-side, they continue to push these ideas to their limit, culminating your entire experience of learning these concepts into a difficult challenge. Celeste continues to do this for every stage, making it some of the most challenging platforming I've done, but also some of the most satisfying to do and complete. Meanwhile, Wonder will continuously introduce new concepts, but rarely mix them together to add complexity like Celeste will. Even though sometimes you will run into a mix-up with added complexity, it's never taken nearly as far as Celeste would have taken it. The best you might get is riding the hippo in the special stage, which is fairly brief, as well as the very final hidden special stage where they do mix interesting ideas to create fun challenges, but this is the only level that really takes it very far. I realize it's likely not the designers at the studio who are totally at fault, and probably more likely higher ups that control these decisions. I have no doubts that level designers in Nintendo could easily come up with some awesome, fun, and difficult levels that are built upon previous concepts already introduced, and then mix them in together to create an even more fun and complex level with appropriate difficulty, just like Celeste. I imagined them having a bowl level that now has several layers of flying charging bowls, with gaps in between that you constantly have to jump in and out of. They then might add on to it by requiring you to use the enemy that jumps at the same time as you do to create a path. There's tons and tons of unlimited potential here where these seriously talented designers could have shined even more. It's just depressing to see Nintendo hardly hold up to the continued level design of a small indie team with incredibly fewer resources at their disposal, and for a game at a much cheaper price point at that. If you have not yet played Celeste, you should definitely go play it. The issue of complexity in Wonder's level design may have a bit to do with how much level variety exists. Most levels will feel fairly distinct from one another, each with their own challenges, unique gameplay, and settings. You'll find yourself in familiar grasslands, fighting off singing piranha plants. Then you might be hopping along transparent cliffs with some rollerblading Koopas, and soon after end up in a poison swamp pushing around some pipes against some turbo buff Koopas. All within the same world, not to mention the charging bulls and overstuffed hippos everywhere. While having so much variety keeps the game fresh, they hardly ever pull these concepts together. I'm doing some speculation here, but it's possible Nintendo was so dead set on creating levels that were very distinct from one another that it left little room for mixing ideas. Or maybe they just forgot. Either way, the reality is that they rarely expanded upon their concepts by mixing them together. Instead, they try to do something completely different for most levels, which severely limits how difficult and complex levels can become throughout the game. In Super Mario World, there's a haunted house in every single world or island or whatever you want to call it, and each one builds on the next, introducing new difficulties and letting you know that this stage isn't going to be so easily beaten. You will have learned there is likely some trick to escaping the haunted house, and that likely there's also a hidden exit as well. In Wonder, there's only a single haunted house stage throughout the entire game, leaving no room to expand on the concept at all. They do bring back the singing King Boo once or twice in a special stage, but they hardly ever expand on it, and they just bring him back more of as a, hey, remember when this happened? It's disappointing just how many great ideas they came up with, but how little they decide to integrate them together. Most levels are fairly open and meant to be explored, and have little puzzles placed everywhere with the purpose of finding secrets and all the purple coins. So while variety here is vast, I wish there were more levels that were more like Wiggler races or the badge challenges, where you can go as fast as you can through them while doing tough platforming challenges without needing to worry about stopping to solve a little puzzle or look for a secret. More of these kinds of levels would have been a great place to ramp up complexity and mix different ideas together. Increasing the amount of variety even more, Nintendo introduces a new kind of break level in Wonder. These are usually short little instance experiences that showcase something small in the game, like a bouncy stage that plays old Mario music and gives you a Wonder Seed, or a stage where you jump to the music and get a Wonder Seed, or a stage where you jump to the music twice and get a Wonder Seed. Feeling it all familiar? While sometimes these can be a nice little reprieve from other levels, some of them definitely do not belong in the game, such as the dash level where you literally just run across some blocks with 0 obstacles, and are then given a Wonder Seed at the end. It's probably worse than the little flower houses at the start of each world. It simply feels like a waste of time and not rewarding at all. Not all break levels are nearly this terrible, but they aren't a whole lot better either. They could have just made these levels give purple coins instead, and that would have felt a lot more appropriate. This is unfortunately a similar issue that exists in Mario Odyssey. Luckily it's not nearly as horrible as it is in Odyssey, but it's still not a good trend. Wonder Seeds are meant to be a reward for finding and completing a Wonder Flower twist or finishing a level. Yet when the game decides to give you a Wonder Flower seed for free by just entering a new world, buying it from a shop, or spending a measly 8 seconds in a level, it feels completely out of place. It's especially bad when you buy a Wonder Seed from the shop. It diminishes the value of seeds because it attaches a value to them. It's an unnecessary bad gimmick that I'd like to never ever see again in a Mario game. Giving out rewards meant for completing challenges and instead giving them out willy-nilly simply reduces how good that reward feels to get. There are also KO levels where the goal is just to kill all the enemies as fast as possible. These can actually be kind of fun and make me think of playing the original Mario Bros. While these are pretty well done as they are, they could have been taken a step further by bringing a wonder twist to them that we've seen before. It would have been another nice way to add a mix of ideas into more of the levels. Because Wonder Flowers add twists that are generally really fun to do, it creates a scenario where you feel even more incentivized to find them when they're a secret. Although not all Wonder Flowers are secrets, they often leave them out in the open to make sure you get to see the twist. Wonder Flowers will often use a concept in a totally new way. For example, there's a level that introduces a new enemy that jumps when you jump, and then later a Wonder Flower will make them giant and smash through normal walls. Sometimes Wonders will turn your character into an enemy to now navigate the level, but still incorporating the ideas you learned from it, like when they introduce enemies that will eat Goombas for lunch and then later turn you into a Goomba that has to hide for their life. I love this concept a lot. It's a really fun way to completely flip ideas on their head while still continuing to use that subconscious knowledge that a player has gained. Again, I wish they would push their ideas a lot further. I don't see why there couldn't be more wonders with mixed ideas increasing their complexity. The furthest they take this idea is in one of the special world levels where they bring back previous wonders. Unfortunately, they don't mix them together and instead sequentially throw them at you more like a wonder gauntlet. Again, there's many interesting things they could have done here, like mixing the jumping shells with the ice, or enemies that kick things around, or the bowls, or even a wonder inside a wonderception if you will. It sounds ridiculous, but it would also be a ton of fun, and it's really annoying to not see Nintendo push these barriers with the great ideas that they have. Anyways, let's backpedal a bit and get back to secrets. Wonder continues the trend of having 3 coins to find in each level, usually making them a challenge to get or hiding them in secret areas. And while secrets can be fun, not all are well done. For example, in the Muncher Field level, the last coin feels very tough to locate with little hints in finding it. On top of that, it's at the end of the level where you enter the area through a pipe, meaning most people will likely zoom right past a part of the screen, or you might even notice that there could be something hidden there. That said, most of the purple coin locations are fine, despite this one being pretty egregious. They add a little bit of an extra thing to do in the game, and they actually have some value beyond being something to mark off a checklist. You can spend purple coins you find in levels on lives, wonder seeds, and your standee collection. You can set up those standees you bought to save people while playing online, as well as strategically place them that give people hints for hidden boxes and other secrets. Playing online is super interactive and a lot of fun. You can give other people items, save others by running into their ghost, or even spread your star power to other players. All these interactions can give you heart points which are shown to other players, giving you a little incentive to be helpful. They can also be gained by finishing the level with the players in your game. It can also make finding secrets a more collaborative effort. Many players might end up resorting to looking up secrets on the internet, which takes some of the fun out of the game, but this circumvents that a lot by making it fun to figure things out with random people. Nintendo designs a few stages with this exact idea in mind, like the hidden box levels, the tube level, and the search party stage, which can honestly be a bit of a headache, but I ended up having a fun experience by finding the final secret and helping everyone else in the level discover it as well. You can also race your friends in a match on certain courses if you would like. I do wish this feature existed for playing against random players. It would add some replayability and fun with some matchmaking, and maybe learning some new things from other players. There could even be a stat by your name that shows how many races you've won. One of the most annoying parts of the game is finding some of the special world entrances. Most of these are fine and are from a secret exit in a level, but 2 of the entrances are very bad. The game makes you revisit something that wasn't a level in order to unlock the path. It feels really underwhelming, similar to the free Wonder Seeds. The worst of the 2 is rescuing the flower miners again. While I did consider going to that stage a couple times, I just turned around immediately and thought there's no way they want me to come back here. But I opened up the level section to see if it had a check mark, and it was marked as incomplete, and I had to revisit the level. I couldn't believe they had put something this bad in the game. They could have easily added a secret entrance in a different level, like in the real last level of the world or any of the other levels before it. Getting to the special world may be bad in some cases, but the special levels themselves are great. The final secret level you get from collecting everything was my favorite level by far. It was a pretty significant challenge and I died a ton trying to get it done. While I didn't expect it, this level was the kind of difficulty I was hoping to get the entire time. Newer Mario games are not typically made with this level of difficulty in mind. But that doesn't mean the game shouldn't have more difficult sections spread more throughout it. There's a lot of room in Wonder for levels of high quality difficulty, and the final secret level alone proves it. It's incredibly fun while building on the badge concepts and not being difficult just for the sake of being difficult. I would have loved to see more levels with this similar level of difficulty, even if it was just a tiny portion of it. In World 4 of Super Mario Bros. 3, there's a giant fish that will eat you whole no matter your size, which is kind of funny but also creates a challenge and sense of danger. You have to be fairly careful to not get eaten. I have a hard time seeing Nintendo adding something like this in a newer game. Even though something like this can be tough to deal with at first, overcoming difficulty can create a solid memory and also still be fun to do. Personally, I might be more on the weird side where I prefer a little too much difficulty instead of having far too little, but it still feels like Wonder has far too little difficulty. Having to actually think about a strategy of how I'm going to get through a certain part of the level and perform difficult maneuvers that make my palms sweat makes completing levels more of an accomplishment. Overcoming difficult challenges is fun, and sometimes it feels like Nintendo forgets that. Even though this game is about spectacle and bewilderment, it doesn't mean they couldn't have added more levels with higher difficulty that I imagine a ton of people would have loved to play, especially considering how popular Mario Maker levels can be despite how difficult they may be, and just the fact that the average skill level of Mario players and people who play games in general has gone up a ton over the years. I've picked the game apart a lot and harped on it not achieving a certain level of difficulty, complexity, and not expanding their ideas enough. But besides these things and some of the other various issues like boss fights, Mario Wonder is truly a very good and magical game. While it's important to see its flaws, it's also incredibly important to praise what Nintendo has done well, and push them to continue improving and iterating on the genre in new and interesting ways. Because this certainly won't be the last 2D Mario game, at least I hope not. Nintendo gives me hope that they are still going to find ways to make people feel that sense of wonder. The art style of Super Mario World still gives me that sense of wonder when I play it. The logical side of me wants to say it's just nostalgia, but the emotional side of me says it's something more. Either way, I see Mario Wonder acting as a similar inspiration, and giving kids who grow up playing it a feeling of wonder.